Amazing. So I think we will go ahead and get started. So hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Tide Talks. My name is Cuckoo and I'm part of the marketing team here at Tide, and I'll be moderating today's session. We're so pleased that you could all join us. And for anyone who is new to Tide, we're the all-in-one business finance platform designed to help you run your business better. We provide everything from business current accounts to tools like invoicing, expense management, team cards, and access to credit all in one app. So you can spend less time on admin and more time growing your business. Tide Talks is our way of supporting the small business community through our online and in-person events. We try to bring you inspiring founders and experts to share practical insights you can use to start, run, and scale your business. Today, we're joined by Isobel Perl, founder of PERL Cosmetics. Isobel started her business at her kitchen table and has grown it into a 7-figure skincare brand without external investment. So in the next 30 minutes or so, she'll show you how she validated her idea, built a brand on a budget, marketed creatively and scaled smart so you can do the same. Plus, she'll be answering your questions at the end. So please do feel free to share those in the Q&A section, which can be found either on the 3 dots on your phone or the 9 dots if you're on a laptop. You click that and then click tools, you should see a Q&A. So please do feel free to share your questions there and we'll go through those at the end. So yeah, sit back and get ready to take lots of notes, and please join me in giving Isobel a warm welcome. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Cuckoo, for having me, and to Tide as well. I hope you all enjoy the next sort of 30-40 minutes of me going through the story and the things that I almost wish that I knew when I started out. So yeah, I'm excited to partner with Tide to bring you guys this masterclass. I will go through these following almost like pillars. So the first one is, at the very beginning, you're going to want to validate your idea before you spend any money at all. Then we'll go into building not just a product, but also a brand around your product. How to then market it creatively and stay consistent with it, as well as scaling smart and staying resilient, which is probably one of the most important things with running a business. And I want to start off with this quote, which is, the key to success is to start before you're ready. And it's so funny because I always say to my friends, if I ever reference reading an article, know that it's a TikTok or a video on Instagram. It was a video on Instagram of someone saying that ready isn't a feeling. Like, don't wait until you feel ready, because it's not a feeling, it's a decision. So you decide that you're ready, basically. And I think a lot of founders use, a lot of aspiring founders use excuses, and I feel like funding is probably one of them, that I don't have enough money to start, I can't find the time, I don't know what I'm doing. And whilst all of those are valid excuses, they are also things that you're just not making a priority, because where there's a will, there's a way to find the time. And I mean, I'm not going to reference Molly May's 24 hours in a day, because I know everyone comes from different walks of life. But I feel like if you've got a burning desire to start something, carving out half an hour a day or 10 minutes just to plug away at the idea, you can find the time. It's the same as like going to the gym. You can find the time to watch an hour Netflix documentary. You can probably find the time to go to the gym for an hour, or to sit and do an hour of ideating. So it's similar with money as well. And that's what I want to kind of go through in this webinar today, is that you don't necessarily need a lot of money to start a business. I started PERL with £1,000. So I'll kind of go on to my story if you don't know about me already. So I'm Isobel. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm the founder of PERL Cosmetics, which is a skincare brand that I essentially started from my parents' bedroom. Well, my bedroom in my parents' house. After I lost my job at KPMG during the pandemic, and it's wild because I look back and think, wow, that girl had some chutzpah, because what sane person decides to launch a business after losing a job with no money, no experience, no industry know-how, but I did it. And so hopefully I can inspire you that you can do the same. And for me, kind of what began as a creative outlet kind of snowballed into so much more than that. So for me, it very much started as a side hustle, and it quickly grew into a fully fledged business, which was obviously it was the intention, but not something I'd massively planned to happen. And I did this all with £1,000 that I had saved from selling my car when I moved into London, and bootstrapped it all the way to where we are today, which is now a 7-figure brand, which is wild. And I essentially did it all with an iPhone and just a insane attitude of I refuse to give up. Because I think one of the biggest challenges with being a founder is that you are going to face a lot of setbacks, and we'll probably dive into them a little bit more. But I think something that I've kind of done really well is share my story in a very authentic way and engage with my audience, bring them along on the journey, share the behind the scenes, the messy middle. Like, it's not perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm just trying my best almost. And off the back of that, I've built a community around the brand. I've created viral products that have sold out 8 times now with our lash oil, and turned that sort of idea into what it is today, which is, I don't even think I explained what it is. It's a skincare brand which prides itself on waterless natural formulations, and essentially it's all about creating skincare that is as good for your skin as it is for your soul, kind of giving you the time to slow down, relax, spend some time looking after yourself, because just doing those little moments of self-care can really help you just relax. It can help with depression and anxiety. And I kind of wanted my brand to be almost like stepping stone to help you get to that place. So that's a bit about me and my journey. And then we'll go into the very first step, which is essentially validating your idea before you spend anything. So I guess before you even have an idea, some of you might be listening now and think, I don't even have an idea, but I know I want to do something. And I think that is a perfect place to be, because essentially the world is your oyster, and almost ideas can sometimes come to you at the strangest times, strangest moments. So, oh, we can't see my slides. That's not good. Oh yeah, no, you can't. Oh dear, hold on guys, sorry. We're stuck. Present something else. Right. Technical error, technical error. Okay, right. Let's go back, let's go back. Oh. Right, I would like to present. Oh, I wonder why that happened. Okie dokie, right. It's not as if we've lived our lives on laptops doing presentations since 2020. Right, share. Let's see if that now works. Sorry,
Yeah,
I was on.
They are well done.
Is that working? Okay, super. Thanks, guys. Sorry, you're all just literally like looking at my name like, wow, she loves herself. So this was a slide about what we're going to talk about today. This was the quote. This was a little bit about me. Maybe we can share these with you afterwards as well, or the recording will definitely be hosted somewhere and shared. So sorry, this is step number 1. So validating your idea before you spend. And as I was saying, you might not necessarily have an idea at the moment. I think the best place to be is to know that you want to start your own business. I think that's the most exciting time. And I think when it comes to creating a business, it's, a lot of times it's, you don't reinvent the wheel. I think so many people feel like they need to create something that doesn't exist already. And I feel like in this at this moment in the world with AI, with social media, with just the internet, and how nothing is essentially original anymore. If you think of something, it's probably been done somewhere else by somebody else. But the thing is that it's not going to be done by you. And I think that's something you need to remember, is that your uniqueness that you add to whatever it is you're going to create is almost what makes your business. Because you can be walking down the high street, and I was saying this earlier, you've got Burger King, McDonald's, Five Guys, Gourmet Burger Kitchen, like so many restaurants that are selling burgers and fries, but they all have their own unique selling points. They all have their own unique customers. And so I think, you know, think about what in your day-to-day life you love. What are you passionate about? What are your frustrations? Because I think that's a really big thing as well, is there anything that frustrates you that you're like, I could do this better? Because that's when brilliant businesses come out the back of it. For example, Mile Off Running, I don't know if you've seen her brand, Alice. She has created running gear specifically for female bodies, because she was getting so fed up of wearing running vests that were created for male physiques that just didn't fit properly, didn't have enough pockets, didn't, you know, ergonomically fit the female body because it was designed for a man. And so how many brands are out there that are creating running apparel? Probably thousands, but she's found her own way to carve out a section of that industry. So I think that's a good way to think about it. And then once you have your idea, you then want to validate it, because ultimately you might think it's the best idea since sliced bread, but other people are like, I would never use that. I would never do that. That doesn't align with me. And so here are some sort of ways that I would suggest you look at validating that idea. I think the first way to go about it, and you've got to be slightly smart with this because Facebook groups are savvy, but essentially creating a Google form with questions in it, include demographic data. So where are you based? How old are you? Male, female, prefer not to say. All of those sorts of things, so that you can get the demographic data of who's answering your survey, but then also ask questions about the product that you want to create. And so say, for example, you wanted to start a skincare brand, you would join different skincare communities on Facebook, and I wouldn't necessarily pitch it as I'm starting a business, but perhaps more I'm doing some research, or, you know, for my dissertation or whatever it's going to be, because I don't want you to get in trouble, because I don't want them to think that you're soliciting for people to buy your product. But essentially, it's a really good way to get feedback from people who aren't related to you, because friends, family, etc. are probably going to be like, amazing idea, and it might not be the most amazing idea. So that's definitely the first step I would take. The next thing I would do is test it with your network again. So obviously they're probably going to have your best interest at heart. So maybe find people who are going to be very savage with you, but get their thoughts and feelings on it, especially once you get to like product development stage. Before you have, you know, customers or people to test with your wider network. So once you've validated that it's a good idea, go to friends and family and ask them to just be as honest as possible. Tell them, don't worry about hurting my feelings. At the end of the day, you're becoming a business owner. I think your feelings are going to get hurt a lot along the journey, and that's when you need to be resilient. But yeah, definitely get their feedback on what it is that you're creating. And then once you've decided, okay, this business idea lands, I've got the product or what I want to create, I would then test with small quantities. So when I launched Pearl, I had 150 jars to sell my clay masks. That was the first product that I launched with. And I literally just launched with 150 units. And I gifted some of those to creators and influencers and sold the rest of them. And that was a really good starting point to take the small amount of money that I had and slowly scale it. So the profit I then made from that 150 units, I think it ended up maybe being like 120 once I gifted some away. The profit I made from that, I could then reinvest back in and get more stock. But also, if I launched the brand and I didn't manage to sell 150 units, I've only, you know, wasted 150 units worth of money. So I think people always think, oh, I need to be big and have like thousands of units and loads of SKUs and all of this. But no, actually, I would suggest just starting small number of SKUs. I launched with just one product. I would probably recommend that to anyone. Launch with one product, test the waters, see what happens, and also launch with a small quantity of units as well, just to test the waters. And once you know that the product lands, that's when then you can start scaling. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what I would recommend doing at the very beginning. And then on to kind of, I guess, a bit of like marketing. So building a brand, not just a product, because ultimately anyone can sell a product once, but how are you going to get that person to come back? How are you going to get them invested in what else you're creating? You want to ensure that you're building, a community around that product that you've created and that business that you've created. And I think for me, like I mentioned earlier, I did that by just showing up consistently, showing up as myself, and creating that connection through social media, which is going to be your best friend, whether you like it or not. So social media is going to be, it's the best free marketing tool. And I know it's changed a lot since when I started 5 years ago, but I still think it's definitely something that you need to be leaning into. I think if you want to be a founder and you're hesitant to use social media, you need to sit down and have a word with yourself. I'm going to give you some tough love on that, because you need to be willing to understand it, to then be able to get someone to help you with it. And that doesn't mean that you have to be making posts and sharing them. You can get social media managers for that. But I think you need to be willing to be involved in that process. So one thing that I think founders and small business owners really luck out on is the fact that they can be the face of their business. You'll see a lot of big companies use employees to be the faces of their brands, and you probably don't really know who the CEO is of many brands that you buy from, because you never see them. Whereas at least with small business owners, you're like, oh yeah, that's Ellie from like Tyler Aromatherapy, or that's Amma from Plant Made. Like, I feel like I really know who the founders are behind the businesses. And I think showing up as the founder is a really powerful tool that you can use to create that sort of brand around your products. I think to also get clear on what your why is. So why have you created this brand? What's the story? Why have you done what you've done? And like, who is it serving? And this goes back to looking at creating a business that solves a problem. I'd say 99% of the time, the brands that do really well are because they've got a really strong story behind why they started. And that's not to say that the story can change. So my story when I started was I lost my job during the pandemic. I've started a skincare business. A new story that I tell is I was getting sick of using lash serums that caused me nasty side effects. So I've created a lash oil. A new story that I'm telling more recently is we're facing a trademark dispute and we're having to rebrand the entire business. So your story will grow and evolve as your business grows and evolves itself. But I think ultimately it's getting clear on that why that will thread between each of those narratives. And I think that's having a really strong story that you can tell to convey with your audience just helps bring them along on that journey. Again, it helps with trust. It helps, I think, I don't know about you, but like, I'll be like, oh, like I want to see what's happening next with that brand. Or like, it's, people love a journey. They love a story. And then I guess on top of that, the next one I wanted to talk about is the storytelling. So it doesn't have to be perfect, and it's your story. It's, I saw actually the other day, Olivia from D. Louise, which is a jewelry brand, someone said to her, your story's boring, you need to change it up. And like, her story is incredible. It's about how she lost her mum to cancer, and the brand is like in memory of her. And, I don't know why on earth anyone would tell her that she needs to change that story, but that it's a very powerful, emotive story as to why she started her brand. And you'll see throughout many sort of founder-led brands, the storytelling piece. And that's not to say every piece of content that you're sharing should be storytelling, but I think you need to get very good at being able to like convey a story. So my advice for that would be, at the start, just film everything, absolutely everything, and start piecing things together and playing around and ideating like what the story is that you can tell, because it really does capture audiences, especially in like very noisy, well, I guess, yeah, in a very noisy world of social media. It can really help captivate your community. So that's kind of a nutshell on step 2. And then step 3 is kind of going into the marketing side. So we've kind of spoken about building the brand and storytelling and things like that. Now I want to talk about marketing without necessarily having a budget. So for me, when I launched, and for actually the first 2 or 3 years, I was purely reliant on organic social media. And I won't say that's the best thing to do, because it was incredibly stressful, and it ended up, I was burning out so many times, because if I don't post a video, I'm not going to make any sales. And that's definitely not a good place to be. You want a holistic approach to your sales funnel, which is going to include ads, email marketing, and perhaps SMS, press publicity, UGC, etc. I'll go through it in the next slide. But I just want to caveat that with, you don't need to be running ads from day one. If anything, a lot of ad agencies that I've spoken to have said, don't run ads until you're turning over around 10K in revenue each month, purely because agencies are bloody expensive, and ad spend is also incredibly expensive. So at the start, you just want to get creative with how you're going to share your brand on social media and wider. So ways that you can do that is leveraging user-generated content and collaborations. So UGC creators are essentially everyday people. You'll send your product to them and you'll ask them to create a piece of content, and majority of people are happy to do this on a gifted basis. The thing is with working with gifted is that you have to have no expectation for them to actually create content. So you can't be like, here's the product, here's a 10-page brief, I want this by Wednesday. You can't do that. You just have to work from like the goodness of like your heart and theirs, that you're gifting them a product, and in exchange they'll create some content that you can share. So it's essentially finding the creators, sending them the product, maybe doing a bit of explanation as to like what it is and how to use it, and then you can utilize the content that they're creating. If you look on TikTok Shop as well, they do a lot of affiliate marketing. So that's another way that you can sort of utilize UGC creators, which is a bit more easily managed, if that makes sense. So that's TikTok Shop affiliates, and essentially they'll post a video, tag your product, and they'll get 10-15% commission if they generate any sales through that. Also, what you can do is find complementary brands. So for example, I'm a skincare brand. I might go to Tyler Aromatherapy, who's a candle brand, and be like, let's do a giveaway, or let's collaborate in some way. You know, perhaps I gift you 20 of my products, you give me 20 of yours, and then for the next 20 orders, people will get a candle, and for her customers, they would get a lash oil. So there's ways as well where you can utilize each other's audiences, where there are crossovers of sort of complementary brands, but obviously like perhaps not competitor brands. Another thing I would suggest doing is repurposing everything. So a video that you made for TikTok, that can go on Instagram, that can go on YouTube. You can create a blog post about that. Why don't you then create a carousel with 5 slides to it? I don't even know what else you could do, a set of stories. So you need to start thinking about content as not just, oh, I've made that one video and I've posted it once. No, we need to not think about it in that way. We need to think, right, I've made that one video. What's the narrative behind that? Can that go on LinkedIn? Can I then create that as a carousel post? Can I send that as an email? What would that look like in a blog? And I think a really good way of actually going about it is to start from perhaps long form content. So perhaps looking at it from a blog. So you've created a blog post, And then how can you then break that blog post down into different elements of content? So that blog post can then become an email, essentially, probably like for like. That can then become 2 posts that you're going to share on Instagram. That can then be drilled down into a video. And so that one content idea that you had has now become like 7 pieces of content, and it's all just stemmed from one idea. And then finally, another thing that you can do, you don't need PR agencies. I actually pitched myself to the BBC and got published. And I've spent thousands of pounds on PR agencies who have not done much for me. So one thing that you can do is start pitching yourself to publicity, and it's not as hard as you think it might be. Essentially, press are looking for strong headlines, strong stories, and that now relates back to that whole building a brand piece. What's your why? What's the story behind the brand? If you can then put that into a bit of a sort of article format for a publicist, start firing off emails. You know, look at what publications you want to get featured in. It could be, for me, for example, The Stylist, Refinery 29, Sheerlux, BBC, The Telegraph, etc. And I would basically put in the subject line, you know, I was so stressed I pulled out my eyelashes. And then I would then pitch, like briefly pitch what the idea is of the story, and then send it off and just keep track of it, and maybe chase them up once or twice and see what happens. But you don't need money to be able to do that. You just literally need your laptop. You just need to be able to find people's emails and just carve out a few hours to just send off some emails. So that kind of wraps up the step 3, which is marketing creatively and consistently. Then I want to go into scaling smart and staying resilient. So growth is not going to be linear. My growth trajectory has honestly been up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, circles, up, down, up. It's been wild. So there are always going to be challenges that you're going to face. And I think staying resilient is just the most important thing as a founder. So even this year alone, I've faced a trademark battle, a forced rebrand, sales have slowed down, cash flow has kind of really slumped. And all of that is quite stressful. And it would be very easy to kind of be like, no, too much, I've had enough, I'm quitting. But you really have to not be a quitter when it comes to being a founder. They say that the two top reasons why businesses fail is, the first one is because co-founders fall out, and the second is because people give up too soon. So my favorite way to think about it is just like, you just don't know what's waiting around the corner. And I think until you can sit down and promise me that you have tried everything in your power to make something work, then there's a conversation to be had. But every time I've come up with a challenge, I've sat myself down and been like, there is still more I can do. There's still more I can try. And that's the mindset that I have when it comes to like hitting those periods of like difficulty. And so things that you can do early on in your business is reinvest your profits, which is obviously easier said than done if you are needing the business to support the majority of your life. And, you know, I've seen those Dragon's Den pitches where the brand's generating negative money and the founders are taking out 50K a year salary. So it might be a case of having to live life quite carefully for a while whilst your business is getting up and running. But if you can try and reinvest as much of the profits as you can back into the business, that just gives you the best possibility to see success there. I know so many founders that are like, oh yeah, I was just like making money and spending loads of money at the same time, and I was buying designer handbags and doing this and doing that, and I was just listening like, oh my god, no, like why were you not putting the money back into the business? So definitely reinvest as much of the profits as you can. Another thing I would suggest doing as well is building systems early on. So don't take shortcuts, even if it's cheaper, but you know it's not as good an option. You're just going to create more work for you in the future. I mean, for example, for me, I started my website on WordPress. I had no idea Shopify even existed. Like, that's how unclued up I was on starting a business. Didn't even know what Shopify was. I started on WordPress, and then a year and a half in, I was like, right, I probably need to migrate everything to Shopify. So that's the hundreds of or maybe thousands of orders that we'd done, like all the customer data, all the products, like just a headache. I had one email marketing platform. I was with MailChimp, and then I was like, well, Klaviyo looks great. Let's migrate everything over to Klaviyo. Again, another headache. So I think just like obviously, like, you know, you might make a decision at the time that in the future you look back and you're like, oh, that probably wasn't the best thing to do. But I think at the time, just really do your research and find systems that are going to help you with the business in the long run, because trying to move systems is such a headache. And just getting processes put in place at any time. Actually, this is something that Grace Beverly does, and something that I need to do myself, is she said that any time a new process came up, they would document it. So that could be anytime a customer query came in and it wasn't a query that was like normally answered, they would document like the steps they would take to resolve it. Anytime, you know, they had to do an order refund, they would document the steps for it. And so essentially they just ended up with like a handbook. I imagine it was saved somewhere online, maybe Notion, of just like every single process that took the business, or like the business did, so that anyone who's new to join or anything that you needed to explain, like it had a well-documented process. So I would really recommend doing that, something that I've not done, and I think I also need to take the words of Grace Beverly. And then finally, something that I've kind of weaved in throughout this conversation is just expect and embrace setbacks. It's going to happen. You are going to be faced with so many challenges, so many setbacks, you're going to make so many mistakes. And I think those are all things that you just have to embrace. You're always going to make mistakes. It's learn from it and don't do it again. If you're making the same mistake over and over, you need to have another sit down and a tough word with yourself. But I think one of the kind of qualities of being a founder is that you just have to dust yourself off and carry on, and it's going to happen time and time and time again. Like, you are going to like fall down, smack your head, get back up, carry on, fall down, and it's just going to happen again and again. And you just need to start building that resilience. And I think resilience, similar to confidence, it's like a muscle. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes. Because let me tell you, I was not a very resilient or confident person 5 years ago when I started, and I would say I have been practicing flexing those muscles a lot over the years, and I've become a lot more resilient. And I think ultimately you've just got to think, you know, I've created this business, I'm not going to let it stress me out to high heaven, because ultimately you've created this to create freedom for yourself, to do something that you enjoy. And if you're letting it almost persecute you, you then need to figure out why you're letting that happen. Like the business is not you, and you don't need to let that business kind of shackle you, which is what I've done in the past. And I think as soon as I just let go of that, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. So that is kind of a brief summary of what I would recommend for step 4, which is scaling smart and staying resilient. And then I just wanted to talk briefly about lessons I've learned the hard way. Obviously, as I've just mentioned, like, mindset is absolutely everything. You've really got to have a strong mindset. You've got to have a growth mindset as well. You've got to be able to look at problems and think, oh, I don't know how to do that, but I can figure it out. Because if you look at something and you're like, can't do it, then it's not the mindset to have. So you really need to like just be open and curious as well. Poor cash flow management. So just being on top of your numbers, being on top of what's coming in, what's going out. And that is something that the Tide tools can definitely help you with as well. So, you know, categorizing your transactions, making smart financial decisions from the get-go. Another thing as well is just like putting your finger to the air and deciding a price. Like that's not a good way to go about pricing your products. So you really have to think carefully about how you're pricing your products. There's a lot of information out there online that can help you. I think something to do is to obviously benchmark yourself against competitors, but to also think, do I want to be stocked in retail? Because if you want to be stocked in retail, you can automatically take 50 to 60% off of that price. That's what retailers are going to want to pay you for that product. Is that going to be enough money for you to make a profit and be sustainable? So I think you really need to kind of look at pricing your product as well. And then obviously something that I've learned in recent years is neglecting trademarks. Don't do it, guys. Do not neglect your trademarks. Once you've landed on a business name, trademark it. Don't do anything else. Wait 2 months. You've got a 2-month opposition period. So I actually trademarked in 2020, but PERL Cosmetics. And then in 2022, when I dropped cosmetics from PERL on our packaging, I didn't think to refile my trademark, and that's when that's why problems have arisen. So yes, please don't neglect your trademarks, because it's just going to cause you headaches in the long run. That kind of almost summarizes up the webinar for today. I just wanted to leave you on this final, I've got a couple more slides, but this kind of final point, which is you don't need a lot of money to start. I essentially built a 7-figure brand from £1,000 from my childhood bedroom in my parents' house. And I think that it's definitely a sticking point is funding and finances and money. So I want to leave you with some inspiring stories of other founders. So Amma from Plant Made started with just £100, and she has scaled her skincare brand into multi-7 figures. She's doing incredible. Another amazing founder at the storytelling piece. So definitely go and check her out. Lucy Hitchcock, I'm pretty sure she's told me this, that she made money to start her brand Partner in Wine from selling clothes on Vinted. Amy Smale from Odd News used her skill set. So she was good at graphic design. So she started creating digital products. She sold logos, and she started selling those online to get enough money to be able to fund her first run of clothing for Odd News. Oh God, I've got so many here. Annie from Faye Flowers. She actually, this is wild, moved back in with her mum and Airbnb'd out her house to generate the revenue to start her business. Chloe from Clomana borrowed £500 from her grandma to start her company, her beauty brand. Even more incredible, Maisie Compton, I think her surname is, from Totes For You, started with £50, and she has just done over £100,000 in sales in one day with a launch of a new bag that she's just launched. Honestly incredible. And then finally, I want to leave you with this one, because it's, you know, you might not know what you want to create. You might not know what brand you want to start, what product you want to sell. And so someone at the moment who is doing this is Grace Andrews. She was working at Diary of a CEO. She's an amazing marketeer. And at the moment, she is essentially building an audience. She doesn't know what she wants to do yet, or maybe she does know and she's just not told the world yet. But she is essentially building an audience so that when the idea comes to her, she has people there ready to buy from her. So I hope those stories of other small business owners have kind of inspired you to get started, because it really doesn't take a lot of money to get started. You just need to get creative. Essentially, you need to get creative. You need to build a brand around it, and you just need to be able to scale smart and stay resilient. And so this entire webinar has been brought to you by Tide. Incredibly grateful that they could put this on for you all, and I'm grateful to be able to share my knowledge with you. So at the moment, you can register your business for just $14.99, which is 70% cheaper than Companies House. So if any of you are looking to register a business, you can do that through Tide, and you can also get a free business bank account that is ready to use from day one. Again, side note, another important thing I would suggest doing is having separate bank accounts. Don't start mixing your business stuff with your personal bank account. It gets confusing. So from day dot, set up your own business bank account that is solely for business profits. And if you're already registered, if you've already registered your business, that's absolutely fine. You can start your account with Tide. You can just sign up with them, so you don't have to worry about the business registration side. They've given you all a code to use. So start 50 when you sign up. You can get £50 cash reward once you spend your first £100. And I believe that's going to be a link shared in the chat. But yeah, finally, just thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning with the slides, but I hope you found that useful. I think we'll hand over to some Q&As. And if you want to connect with me, I am at Isobel Perl on Instagram. My business is at PERL Cosmetics, PERL Cosmetics. And my personal account is just at Isobel Perl. So yeah, I look forward to connecting with you.